Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Protiviti's Process Excellence webinar this morning. Appreciate all of your time. This session is being recorded. We're going to make it available and posted as a replay after the event. So if anybody sees any slides that they want to sort of take note of, then don't worry, you'll be able to have a look at these slides after the event. And if anybody particularly wants a copy of the slides, then feel free to reach out to us over email after the event itself. For those of you who don't know Protiviti, we're a global consulting firm. We're over 6,000 professionals across 28 countries with 75 offices around the world. In the UK, we're headquartered in the Shard in London. We've got 6 additional offices covering the major regional hubs, including Bristol, Manchester, Birmingham, and Leeds. So we're well represented across the UK. We help and support clients around a wide range of topics. The topic today falls under our business performance improvement practice. So this is where we help clients with change and transformation challenges. So that's around top-line growth, cost reduction, profitability, customer experience, digital transformation, and innovation. So our session today is being led by Denise Castaneda, Senior Manager in our BPI practice. Denise leads our process excellence capability here in the UK. She'll be supported by Luciano Hoti, a manager also in our BPI practice, who is focused around helping our clients around program delivery and change assurance. And I'm Derek Cummings. I'm a director within our business performance improvement practice as well. We're joined today by 2 guest speakers, by Joe Barnacle, Head of Change at the Post Office, and also by Diane Sudlow, Business Improvement Manager at Babcock International. Both Joe and Diane are highly experienced change and process improvement practitioners, and we're extremely pleased and grateful for them giving up some time today to come and support this event and to share with you some of their valuable insights on the topic of process excellence. So we'd like to get started now with the detail. Just before I hand over to Denise, I'd like to draw your attention to the Q&A feature on the platform that we're using today. So throughout the event, if you have any questions that you'd like to raise on the topic as we go through, just post a brief question on there, and what we'll do is a little bit of a wrap-up at the end. So rather than sort of interrupt the flow of the content itself, we'll look to pick up a number of those questions at the end. If we don't get a chance to answer your question, just due to the limitations of time, then we'll look to follow up directly with people who raised a question after the event. So without further ado, over to Denise to take us through an introduction to process excellence. Thank you, Denise.
So in today's world, we've all experienced the rapid turnaround in our ways of working, especially in the last few months, leveraging any and all technical tools as best we can to keep moving forward. And more often than not, this is jump-starting many organizations' digital transformation to maintain resiliency during this time. The speed of change, innovation, and disruptive business models, as well as ensuring a seamless end-to-end customer experience, has created a lot of pressure on organizations. Automation is also reducing costs, which in turn is applying margin pressure to businesses who fall behind unless they have a unique and compelling proposition or brand. So what is the recipe for a successful business nowadays? What are the ingredients? Well, we have listed many components in the slide that you see. In our view, it's the business processes which bind the other ingredients together. Next slide, please. So why is process excellence important? Accompanying organizations through their transformation journey, we have realized that a lot of the challenges and frustrations they're still facing are about process management across their entire value chain. And yes, we hear you. Here are some examples we've gotten verbatim from clients as well. However, we believe that to stay in control and to comfortably move forward during this journey, the focus of attention should be on process excellence. Why? Because inefficient and ineffective processes can inhibit the business success in many areas, and process excellence is a valuable competitive differentiator because it's both a source of customer satisfaction and experience as well as a driver of financial performance. Next slide, please. We believe process excellence isn't a destination for a successful business. It's actually a vehicle. It will carry you from a place where you can deliver greater value to your customers and experience the resulting benefits in the bottom line. Typically, this is driven by the need to improve financial performance, business agility, scalability, reliability and predictability to make management decisions, customer experience and quality, as well as transparency and control. There are plenty of definitions for process excellence, and all of them orbit around efficiency and effectiveness, ultimately improving the customer experience. Process excellence reduces the barriers to more efficient processes, maximizing results across the organization to achieve the greatest output possible at the lowest cost. Next slide. So what is process excellence? We don't see process excellence as a linear progression. It's a constant cycle of continuous improvement as organizations grow and mature. It's a powerful combination of several techniques and methodologies which are designed to maximize process efficiency and thus an organization's performance on a sustainable basis. These elements can help you, one, understand and improve your current processes, but also monitor your new processes and identify opportunities for improvement to continuously achieve process excellence in this dynamic and changing world. A company can advance by focusing on only one of these areas or executing individual projects to address specific issues, but holistic, balanced roadmap is necessary to truly achieve overall process and operational excellence. Next slide. A lot of organizations have focused their digital transformation efforts almost exclusively on the technology. And while technology is important, exclusive focus on technology risk misses a key component around another significant ingredient in the mix, and that's people. Your customers are people. This is fundamental in a B2C context, but it's also true for B2B companies as well. People buy from people. Your businesses and your propositions serve to meet the needs of individuals or individuals who represent their companies. By taking a human-centered design approach to your process redesign, this requires you to frame your problem statement according to specific users, their needs, and any insights you may have already gained. The problem statement should be focused on the people you're trying to help, rather than technology, monetary returns, or product specifications. By understanding what people are good at, what they're poor at, what their wants, needs, and emotions are likely to be as they interact with our business and business processes, it's an important aspect in designing and redesigning what can be both efficient and can add value. Next slide. So how do we achieve process excellence? From our perspective, it requires taking a holistic view between people, metrics, technology, as well as the process itself. Many of our engagements in the last year were around helping clients achieve process automation. And these clients have bought into the concept of it, but are often stuck with a prioritization of delivering the value of RPA at a steady pace. While many of our clients want to start immediately at the improving and automating, as you can see in the middle part of the circle, the start of any process of an improvement journey is to understand what you have and the issues you need to fix. Some tools and techniques we've used around this include process mapping, which we often find is a simple activity that allows our clients to quickly understand roles and responsibilities, as well as customer and cross-functional interactions and the immediate improvement opportunities if they're done to the correct level of detail. Leveraging data mapping and analytics is another key theme we've seen, particularly in the last year, as it relates to understanding how data flows between those processes and how they're mapped and transformed is a key input for any automation activity, especially as if you are in an organization that has multiple systems, legacy systems that don't always speak to each other. Simple analysis of exception cases is a great way to identify business cases for improvement. And for those whose processes are mature and highly supported by CRMs, ERPs, or similar systems, techniques like process mining can both process map and utilize the data you have, but also reveal a lot of granular detail from a data analytics perspective in a much quicker manner. Skipping over to the managing piece, businesses often strive to develop process or KPI-based dashboards, which provide insight into how their processes are operating. However, best-in-class now moves away from monitoring by dashboard into more action-oriented, intelligent monitoring by exception. So what we mean by this is that there are process monitoring agents like digital tools, chatbots, whatever that might be, that are able to learn what normal looks like and to automatically call out those exceptions as they occur in real time to enable supervisors and managers to step in and take action and make those informed decisions immediately rather than later on. This approach and methodology as a whole has helped our clients to redesign processes, increase automation, and support scalability for growth and build resiliency to focus on what matters the most: their workforce, their customers, and their experience. Next slide, please. Oftentimes when we talk about process automation, people are often describing the use of robotic process automation, or RPA, but we don't believe it's just that. There is a wide array of technologies that support process automation. For example, where your business processes are much more paper, spreadsheet, or email-based, you might derive significant benefits from focusing initially on workflow or case management tools rather than jumping right into RPA. You can't expect your frontline staff to have expertise in all these capabilities as well, and that's why organizations need almost a continuous improvement delivery team to provide support and to have the expertise in a small number of complementary technologies in order to help achieve overall improvement. So that being said, I'll hand it off to Diane Sudlow from Babcock International, who will share some of her experiences on the road to achieve process excellence through Lean Six Sigma techniques.
Okay, thank you, Denise. Good morning, everyone. My name is Diane Sudlow. As Denise said, I work at Babcock International, which is a leading provider of critical complex engineering services which support national defence, save lives and protect communities. I am Business Improvement Manager in the production facility in Bristol, which is a low volume, high value, high complexity manufacturing environment. And I'm also just about to start a Master Black Belt apprenticeship, which is being delivered by Capella Associates. So improvement really is a journey, it's not a destination. So I just wanted to speak to you about a few things that I believe are really important for getting started on that improvement journey. So this first graphic is adapted from Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. And if you haven't seen his TED Talk entitled How Great Leaders Inspire Action, I really would encourage you to check it out. I think I must have watched it at least 10 times and I get something new from it every time. So if you haven't seen it, I really would encourage you to go take a look. So the first step in launching any kind of improvement program is understanding why you want to do it. It must flow down from your strategy and it must be a fundamental enabler to delivering your strategy. Otherwise, why spend your time doing it? At best, it will deliver marginal results, and at worst, it will actively disengage people because they don't see the point. If your improvement program isn't linked to your strategy, it becomes something that people do on top of the day job. But for it to be truly successful, improvement is the day job. Companies such as Toyota, who are very successful at process excellence, don't differentiate improvement from the daily work. They are one and the same thing. This is because the improvement activity has a clear purpose and a clear why. Starting with the why will allow you to understand the true purpose of your improvement program, which will determine how you're going to achieve it, which will in turn drive what you focus your improvement resources on. Unfortunately, many people do start with the what or the how. I've seen it in an example where a company decided that they wished to roll out Six Sigma and trained lots of people in the DMAIC framework, which is define, measure, analyze, improve, control. This meant that the things that got fixed weren't always aligned to the strategy because these people were going around with this DMAIC-shaped spanner looking for DMAIC-shaped problems to fix. These things that they did fix sometimes had little or no impact on the customer, whereas the important stuff didn't get fixed because it just didn't fit the framework. This led to the perception that improvement tools don't work. And they absolutely do, but you have to start in the right place. In this instance, the tools drove the strategy, not the other way around, which is far from optimal. In my current role, I've recently done an exercise with the production leadership team to map out our 1, 3, 5, and 10-year strategies for the facility, which is our why. We're now thinking about how we're going to achieve those strategies and what actions we need to take. These actions have now become our improvement program, which we understand, we're engaged with, and as a team, we feel ownership for. So to this point, it is fundamental that you bring people along with you on your improvement journey. So you need to be able to communicate the why in a concise and compelling manner. To quote Simon Sinek, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. By giving people a clear vision and showing them why improvement is necessary, you allow them to create their own personal why they should buy into process excellence, why they should invest time and effort in it, and why they should help to make it a success. Joe's going to talk more about the people side of things later, but I would urge you to consider this yourself. What is your personal why for launching an improvement program? Me personally, I do it because I want to remove the things from the workplace that hold people back and which prevent them from fulfilling their true potential. I want every single person in my factory to go home at the end of every day safe, happy, fulfilled, and feeling like they were able to be at their best. Your personal why may be very different to this, but it's good to have the awareness of what your motivation is, because again, it will inform what you do and how you do it. Next slide, please. The other side of knowing what action you need to take is understanding where you are now, your current state, and gathering process data is key to this. But you do need to make sure that you measure what's right, not just what is easy. One of the fundamentals of Lean is truly understanding what adds value from the perspective of the customer. So you need to make sure that your data reflect the customer's reality and that it tells the whole story. It might be easy to measure the performance of your bit of the process, but what about those hidden bits that aren't so easy to measure? That you can't see where someone spends time amending your work because it wasn't quite what they wanted. The bit where something wasn't quite ready in time, but it has a huge impact on other items in the schedule. Or the bit where you're waiting 2 weeks for a document to be approved. These bits will take more thought and more effort to measure, but they might make all the difference to how satisfied your customer is. And you should also try and get individual data points, not just averages. These definitely don't tell the whole story. Imagine you have 1 foot in the bucket of freezing cold water and 1 foot in the bucket of boiling hot water. On average, you're probably just quite nice and warm, but in reality, you're probably not going to be very happy. So remember that customers don't feel averages, they feel every success and they feel every failure. So misleading data can lead you to make the wrong decision, and the best way to check is to go look see. You need to go to the Gemba, which is roughly translates as the true place. These are the systems and the processes that directly related to a flow of work that adds value to the customer. So go to where the work is done and walk the process. Observe what's happening with an open mind and challenge any assumptions you may have. The people working in the Gemba know the process better than anyone, so talk to them. Ask open questions and listen respectfully to what they tell you. They usually have the best ideas about how the process could be improved too. A few weeks ago, I tried to improve flow through the factory and looked at some data from our ERP system to understand where the bottleneck was. It clearly pointed to a particular machine that was overloaded with work. I went to the machine to confirm this, but found there were no piles of inventory waiting to be worked on. I chatted to the operator, and he said, if anything, he had too little work. I investigated further and found that the problems upstream in the process were preventing work getting to this machine. So the data was telling me what was supposed to be happening, not what was actually happening. If I'd acted on the data alone, I would have made the wrong decision, but a 5-minute go-look-see made all the difference. In his book, The Leader's Handbook, Peter Schultz gives a very powerful quote. All the diseases in the organization create symptoms felt in the Gemba. So Go Look See is an invaluable tool for understanding your current state. Go and see it for yourself. Next slide, please. The Go Look See is also a great tool for understanding the maturity of your organization, which is absolutely vital when deciding how you're going to improve. Improvement is a journey, and if you try and apply the wrong tools for where you are on that journey, you'll make life really hard for yourself. So what should you look for to know where you are on the journey. So in this red phase on the diagram, output is really chaotic and uncertain. Delivery, quality, and cost are unpredictable. A lot of management time and effort is spent firefighting and reacting to day-to-day issues. People can feel they're making good progress in one area only to be sideswiped by an unexpected issue in another area. Much of the work's tactical, and improvement efforts are focused on problem solving and troubleshooting. Very few improvements will have tangible financial benefit. There are often few useful or meaningful metrics, so true business performance is really difficult to ascertain. When asked if they had a good week, people respond based on gut feel rather than data. Same applies when trying to work out the cause of poor performance. A lack of data means that discussions are based on opinion. And if people can't agree, then the discussion ends in stalemate and no action gets taken. So the key action in this phase is to stop trying to manage the chaos better. This is a trap I see people fall into all the time. The focus should be on creating systems of work that will reduce the variation and allow us to eliminate the chaos altogether. It is difficult to do because people are so busy firefighting and trying to meet demand that they don't have time to put the bow and arrow down for long enough to pick up the machine gun. Standardization, training, and learning from our mistakes are key steps towards achieving stable, predictable output, and a clear purpose is really key to maintaining the focus. So you need to keep a good view on your why. Once stability is achieved, you move into the amber phase, and the true process performance can be seen more clearly. Metrics become easier to interpret and much more meaningful. There are fewer surprises, so delivery is more predictable. However, the level of performance still may be below what the customer needs. Management are no longer consumed with reacting to issues, so their time can now be spent being proactive and thinking about what needs to be done to close the performance gap or to achieve a future strategy. Continued compliance to standard process is key here, as without standards there can be no improvement. The green phase can then build upon this stable foundation to improve the performance of the business to become agile and innovative. Many people try to jump straight to this phase because they want to see results straight away, but you have to put in the right foundations first to enable you to do this. Referring back to my example from the first slide, they jumped straight to Six Sigma without making sure they had a foundation of standard, stable processes, good process data, and a culture of continuous improvement. They didn't appreciate the importance of applying the right tools at the right time, so their success was limited. Improvement in this phase must also be done in a controlled way. The question, what can we do, results in scattergun improvement attempts, which have little impact on the customer. The more difficult but more focused question is, what do we need to do to achieve the vision? So once again, a clear vision is key. So perhaps as a little exercise after this webinar, you'll go to your Gemba. Go with an open mind and without any preconceived ideas and try to work out where your organisation is in terms of improvement maturity. This simple act of self-awareness is a great first step towards process excellence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane. So what we want to focus on, linking to what Diana said, to put the right foundation, there is another element that is important to achieve process excellence, and that is creating a culture of continuous improvement and people. If we move to the next slide. So let's take a look at the S-curve pattern of innovation. So what it shows us is that usually when an industry, a product, or a business model evolves over time, revenues, they gradually rise until the maturity stage. And that is the point where the innovation factor becomes important to continue to generate more revenues. Given the speed of change in these digital areas, to support growth and foster innovation to remain competitive, we believe that companies, they need to be agile and they need to build a culture of continuous improvement. They really need to make an ongoing effort to improve all the elements of the organization, their products, their service, but also their processes, people, tools. Next slide, please. But what is continuous improvement? it's really about adopting a sustainable approach to enhance customer experience. It requires commitment, investment, and persistence. What you have listed in here, there are a lot of key ingredients for building that continuous improvement approach. What I really want to highlight is a new way of working that promotes three key things. One is performance transparency. We need to identify what is going well, what is going wrong, and really think about what is the root causes of our challenges. It is also about knowledge sharing and education. Another key element for continuous improvement is people involvement. The frontline people are those that are key, they're having key insights, and they do drive continuous improvement. Key challenge in here is that our people, they need to be sustained and supported by the leadership team. Let's go to the next slide, please. When we talk about continuous improvement in the process management space, what we observe that most of the organizations tend to be not very mature in the way they manage their process improvement, and they actually are very reactive with this. So they kind of triggered by failure or change initiative. So they're very, very reactive. So here the goal is to move from that initial stage of reacting to change and actually be moving towards the being innovative with the continuous improvement in culture. Let's move to the next slide, please. One of the key tools that we have identified that can support that the building of a continuous improvement culture is design thinking. It is a tool that puts the customer at the center of the attention and explores the root cause of critical challenges. So it is about empathizing with your customers, both internal and external, and that will help you to define what is your problem statement. Once the problem statement has been identified, we need to come up with new ideas for potential solutions. But again, in here, there's a key step typical of a design thinking process. So we don't build solutions yet, but we need to prototype our ideas and test them because we can learn more from them. We can learn more about our customers. We can define a better problem statement. We can identify new ideas. And in the end, we will come up with very effective solutions. Let's move to the next slide, please. And what you can see here, this is the double diamond typical diagram of a design thinking. What we observe that most of the organizations, they do place themselves in the center of this diagram at the very beginning of the solution space. What the design thinking is actually telling us is to take a pause, to step back and get into the problem space instead. So understanding, so my current issues, yeah, we do have issues, but what is the real problem? What is underneath this problem and these issues? We need to explore the root causes of our challenges. Once we define that, then we can step into the solution space, have new ideas, analyze all of them, and then identify our effective solutions. And I will hand it over now to Jo, and she will tell us more about the people challenge. So we're moving from continuous improvement culture, but as we highlighted before, people are really important for the process excellence. Thank you, Jo.
Sorry, just before Jo picks up, a quick mention, guys. Feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A box on the left-hand side, as we'll be more than happy to address anything that you have at the end of the presentation. But I'll let Jo take over now.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm Jo Barnacle. I'm the Head of Change People at the Post Office, and I manage all of our change practitioners that deliver our projects across a number of portfolios, so all the project managers and BAs, for example. And I've worked in a number of different business change roles and also some specialist agile roles, as well as working on agile transformations and digital transformations. So last but not least, the people challenge. How do we create a culture of continuous improvement? Next slide, please. Okay, so this is nicely aligned with some of our previous messages, actually. So it is all about just checking in and setting the foundations. So as we know, the word culture can mean many things to many people. And so it's often helpful to just check you've got clear foundations and communications in place. So start number one with the basics. It sounds obvious, but if you actually went out and asked a number of your employees what that big why is at the moment as well, and what your company purpose is and who your key customers are, would they be able to answer you? So it's especially important to talk about this because, as we've mentioned before, you're going to need to keep refocusing the teams involved with continuous improvement and process work on the ultimate goal behind their efforts. You might actually be refreshing your purpose or vision or strategy at the moment, as many of us are, in response to the macro environment. And these things are inputs to your definition of culture, and this can cause a bit of a challenge because it's downstream. So whilst these things can take a while, in this kind of scenario, it's helpful to pick some key strategic priorities and just anchor on those for your culture to support those and your continuous improvement work. That will help you move forward. A key element here too is context. So when you're imagining successful continuous improvement culture, it's important to make it relatable to your company. So what good looks like within your company, your current levels of maturity around process, your current sector conditions, and your people. It is about stretching yourself though, and you may even want to be provocative or disrupt in certain areas, but it's just good to ensure that you decide to do this consciously. And keep reviewing your options as you discover new information. And then number three, try and turn culture into something that people can really relate to. And one of the most effective ways of doing this is to move quickly into observable behaviours and ways of working to make it real. So, for example, when I joined the post office, I found that this was actually laid out really clearly. The structure they use, which you might find helpful for our values, for example, are care, challenge, and commit. Care, we care by thinking customer, and thinking customer means, for example, always putting customers first. Thinking customer is not, for example, resisting change because we've always done something the same way. So that structure can be really helpful. In terms of some top tips, it's worth remembering, and we're often reminded of this, that leaders are always being watched. So model the way. And this is really a phrase that comes from a book by James Hughes and Barry Posner, Practices of Exemplary Leadership, which is highly recommended. So set the example by behaving in ways that reflect shared values, and try and experience it a little bit yourself, even if you're not directly involved. It will enable you to be much more authentic. And also talk to your leaders about how you're going to change your language. So what I learned and the mistake that I made in the last project and what I would have done differently will really help give your colleagues permission to adopt the same language and changes in behaviour. Next slide, please. Okay, so mobilising the team. If you're starting off on continuous improvement, or maybe you're making a change or refreshing your approach, it's useful to remember that this is a change. So it's helpful to apply some organisational change management theory. If we do not support and equip individual transitions, then our future state looks nothing like the future state we expected. So a good rule of thumb in any initiative, the higher the percentage in the amount of planned benefits that result in people changing the way they do things, the more the need for some dedicated business change support or effort. So some key elements of successful change are a strong and urgent case to change, along with your active and visible leadership. So if we imagine the current situation with COVID, no doubt we're seeing some drastic and successful changes happening in businesses. And that's partly because COVID, in this context, is a very useful burning platform. So the next question really for you is how companies sustain the change. So you're going to need a clear articulation of what the drivers are, and these might be things you're moving away from, risks, threats in the market, and your goals, what you're moving towards. And a practical way also of proving your seriousness and commitment and alignment at leadership level is to use some of the more formal routes available. So, for example, I've previously added a project management competency to a competencies framework called Growth Mindset and Continuous Improvement, with a clear definition of what good looks like. And it sits alongside and is just as important as the harder competencies in the model, like financial management. Or you might want to include it in a set of shared objectives for people in similar roles. And you might want to add it to job descriptions if you're really serious. So that tip being that it's all part of the messages we send in what we choose to measure. So a note on resistance. It may be that in management we've been talking about some of these initiatives and adjusting to things for a long time before we launch it to others. And they need to play catch up. And at this point, this is quite often when you'll see resistance, especially as part of people processing the new information and working out what it means for them, and you'll see their initial reactions. But with the help of a good pilot team or a forum, a few others really to help you keep in touch with the realities on the ground, you can and should anticipate some of the key areas for resistance and mitigate them and acknowledge them in your communications up front. So it's also worth running a quick sense check, or rather a sensitivity check, because you might see an area ripe for improvement, but what are the potential implications for the people involved? Who are the potential winners and losers? If you're worried about this, do keep them engaged, keep talking, and keep them updated on the decision-making processes as you discover new information, and you can work through those areas together. Next slide, please. So mindsets and behaviours. As we start embedding some of the new processes around process improvement, we'll hit lots of new territory, and we can expect to get lots of questions about how management are going to deal with it. So our goal here is to enable people to deal with ambiguity themselves, work in teams, solve their own problems and propose ways forward. And this really boils down to mindset. I recently started an initiative with some senior managers running work streams. And as the only trained program manager, they looked to me for some answers about how we were going to set up and run things. But having been there before, I envisaged that it might not be too long before the next stage was for that group to naturally challenge some of those processes and templates that I put in place as part of storming. So we had ways of working kick-off, and the sponsor and I said up front that we don't have all the answers. What we do have is some core tools and techniques that work well, and that we all own how well this team operates. So all we were asking is that they try new stuff, review it, and propose adjustments. And we all own how well we work as a team as a result. It's a very different dynamic to kick off with, and it's good to give it a try. So again, really useful at this point to reinforce customer-centric and end-user-centric mindsets to keep people focused on why we're doing the work. And if you've got pockets in your organisation as well, using Agile or Lean, make sure that you leverage them. You'll find them potentially in process teams, obviously, but definitely in IT or web development and product teams, and maybe more digital teams. And also maybe some of your suppliers. They'll have a great starting point in terms of the mindsets that they may well have been using for a number of years already in pockets of your organisation. So a note on growth mindset. If you don't talk about this already, it's a very helpful thing to launch at this time. In the current climate, it's an easy sell, and it can give something very positive to focus on. You may well be finding that training budgets are being cut. You may find that the career paths are currently uncertain. But with growth mindset, you can allow people to develop new skills, experiences, and versatility, and to open up opportunities for themselves. And it's worth also exploring how growth mindset can bring benefits to the customer, company, and individual. And this will definitely drive new behaviours and positive ways of working. Okay, next slide, please. So just a bit of a recap and a checklist. If continuous improvement is a new thing, or maybe you're refreshing it, it's worth just checking in on a few key points. So who? And particularly when you're starting off a new initiative, the initial teams that you choose are crucial. So try to select people who actively collaborate, who can deal with ambiguity and work through conflicts, people that are often early advocates, so that you have a strong chance of creating some early success stories that you can then communicate to build momentum. And choose leaders, and this is not necessarily leaders in the hierarchy, but leaders with positive energy and certainly with resilience. But throw in a few informed skeptics as well. They'll help you to see the pitfalls and the risks and plan for them and overcome those resistance points later on. The when for me is really about review cycles and building them into your schedule and your plans up front and committing to them. And try and keep them short at first so that you can go around the cycle and course correct as quickly as possible. And then start smaller and iron out the bumps in your process and the ways that you've communicated and engaged your teams, and then scale. And try and encourage that team to document the basic lessons learnt and the pitfalls and the basic practical information that you need so that you can enable other teams to mobilise much more quickly. Some basics here. We're all familiar with the management term quick wins or no regrets, but it's worth checking the theory that this is actually based on. It's the cost-effort matrix. So try and use that if it's helpful for you to look at where you want to focus. You know, where are there data first and then opinions about low effort but high benefit areas to focus on. And this one I call Pandora's box. So beware that you might not enjoy some of the challenges that are raised as you empower your teams to explore your processes. Those bottlenecks that are flagged might be in your team, and the wait times that are highlighted might cause some awkwardness, but it's important to keep the dialogue going and explore the different perspectives. Try to stay receptive and positive. And lastly, regular retrospectives again. I can't emphasize this enough. If you haven't been able to clarify all the detail of how you're working and you're going through trying things out, the best thing that you can do is just get people together and have a quick retrospective. It will help you resolve people challenges, behavior issues, but also practical and technology glitches. So again, if you know of any agile teams, you'll find that they have a repeating invite into these in their diary months in advance. They prioritize them because they see the benefit on a weekly basis, for example. So if you want to, adjust the frequency by all means as you learn and change the focus of them to keep them fresh, but try and keep them going because you'll see the benefits. And you can also use them to look back on how much you've achieved, share some more success stories, and do some celebrating. Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Jill, for taking us through that. We are starting to get a few questions through now, which I'll start throwing over to everybody else in a second. For those of you who haven't had a chance to raise a question, now we've got a good chunk of time at the end of this session. We've got 15 minutes. This is your time to get some input in terms of some of the particular challenges that you're having in your organisation, and obviously to benefit from the fact that we have Diane and Joe here, who are highly experienced change and process excellence professionals, and to get their opinion as well. So I'm going to look at the first question that's come in from the audience. Again, I'm not going to announce individuals because they may not want their name and company to be known, but we have a set of questions that have come through, really, which is around Lean Six Sigma tools and techniques, and also sort of linked to that is a question around data analysis tools used to solve problems and how to communicate the results of these to team members. So I'm going to ask Diane and then Joe and then Denise specifically to comment on these. So Diane, Lean Six Sigma tools and techniques you're using to help your business in making data-led decisions, and also specifically any data analysis tools that you're finding are particularly useful to you in Babcock. Diane, over to you.
So my factory is quite kind of new on its improvement journey, So if you think about that diagram I showed, we're kind of still really in the red area, the kind of unpredictable, unstable area. So the tools I'm using are probably quite basic, just real things like have a look at if you have got any data, it probably will be quite erratic in terms of its stability. But if you can get any trends out of there, just simple process trending. For example, our non-conformances, we've been looking at what the root causes of those were and addressing those to try and get a bit of stability into our processes. We've been doing a lot we've been using the 5 whys a lot. So when we do get issues, really involving the guys on the shop floor to try and understand what the issue is. Not necessarily data-driven, but it's obviously a far greater step forward than just assuming what's gone wrong. By really getting down there and talking to people, you get a much better understanding. And again, we've been trending those. In terms of communicating the results of those, we've just got really simple kind of bulletins that we call toolbox talks that we put out. So as well as involving the operators, obviously they get that first-hand learning. We also kind of document what we can and put that out as a toolbox talk to help the other guys as well.
That's great. Thanks, Diane. And in terms specifically of data analysis type tools, you sort of said you're keeping things fairly basic. So I'm assuming that's things like Microsoft Excel, but any other sort of data analytics tools beyond that you're finding useful?
Yep, there's one called Minitab that I use all the time, and that's quite specific to improvement work and kind of process statistics. So I definitely recommend that if you have it.
That's great. Thanks, Diane. I'm just going to put you on mute a second, and I'm just going to throw that open to Joe as well. So from a post office point of view, Joe, Lean Six Sigma tools and techniques you're using in particular, and also any specific data analysis tools you're finding useful as well?
It's probably a slightly different emphasis on that for us, really, because we run probably 5 or 6 different portfolios of different styles of projects. It won't be used in every single one, so it will be used in the projects that are more focused around process improvement. So what we tend to find is that our BA community, what we've done is we've actually created a community of practice for BAs, so the business analysts, who tend to be a little bit more involved in this sort of work, and they tend to share their tools and templates and try and pick the right one for the scenario that is presenting itself. So it's less specifically focused about using Lean Six Sigma. But I think just to build on the Excel tools, what we're finding very useful at the moment is obviously using Power BI to visualize the data much more clearly for our stakeholders that aren't as close to the data. So obviously with COVID and some of the challenges, a lot of what we're focused on at the moment is keeping post office branches open. And that means that we need to track on a regular basis some of the key data points and dashboards around that. So we find that particularly helpful. So I think the key point for me is probably in a much more varied environment, it's probably good to build the communities and allow those specialist roles to then share tools and pick the right ones for the job.
That's great. Thanks, Joe. And again, we're also seeing a lot of our clients starting to take advantage of some of the Office 365 features around things like Power BI. But I'm going to throw over to Denise now. Denise, in terms of other sort of process improvement tools and data analysis tools that we've used with our clients, do you want to kind of comment on that as well?
Sure. Probably a more unique tool that, again, as I mentioned earlier, is probably for organizations that are running off of CRM, ERPs they're a little bit more mature, and their technology is leveraging process mining. It's kind of a new generation of like an advanced analytical tool where it's basically mining the data live as it goes, and then you're able to see from there kind of where process inefficiencies are, loops where the data is getting stuck, whatever that might be. So you have a lot of, not unlike the BI tools, that you have a lot of visibility right on the outset. And it's really kind of used to help with the design of process changes and automation efforts, as well as validate effectiveness of any changes and controls with as you're implementing them. I think there's another follow-on question I think I see on kind of communicating the results of those tools. And I think part of that has to be too is educating your team members on what the tool is, having them leverage and utilize it as well, so they can understand how what it's analyzing, what you're trying to get out of, and what's coming out, because that's really where you're going to be able to get some of the buy-in, especially when you have a workforce who's a bit reluctant on new technology, for them to be able to truly understand the value of how it's being leveraged and utilized.
That's great. Thanks, Denise. We have a few questions coming in now, which is great. Again, people still got a chance to raise new questions. We've got one specifically here, which is asking Joe, but I'm also going to ask Diane to comment on this in a second. So, Joe, as part of mobilizing the team element of your change program at the post office, was there a formal continuous improvement education program that you used as part of launching that and getting your capability sort of up to speed? There we go.
Okay. I think that's a tricky one, certainly because training generally results in some funding requirements. So I think this is really about focusing on those that are impacted and are really at the centre of driving forward any of these initiatives that are going to need the skills. So we don't have a specific CI program for them, but we do have a pretty good learning and development suite of tools, and we also use some other online learning tools where they can self-develop in our change and project community. And then it would probably be a case of doing some much more targeted materials for individual teams, and then helping them scale that, really. So the short answer is no, but there are lots of ways of building up people's capability and knowledge, and I think it's really key to spend a lot of time with the first teams that you're going to involve, and then scale it as you need to, really, to also minimise the cost.
That's great. Thanks, Joe. I'm just going to throw the same question over to Diane as well. So from a Babcock point of view, kicking off that continuous improvement activity, was there some kind of training program that you put on at all levels in the organization? Did you focus at a particular level? How did you approach that?
Yeah, so we've been following the belt system, which is, some of you may be familiar with, so yellow belt, green belt, black belt, and so on. We do a one-day lean awareness training course that I deliver, which is basically for anybody. It just explains what lean is. It kind of talks about, makes people familiar with the terminologies that they might have heard. And we kind of do a simulation, so it's really fun as well. We do yellow belt, which is quite a lot more in depth. It kind of loosely follows the Plan, Do, Check, Act structure. And the attendees do classroom training, and then they have to go away and deliver a project as well. We've previously done green belt training, but as Joe mentioned, funding for that kind of in-depth training is often difficult. We're piloting something at the moment where we are doing green belt training as a funded apprenticeship. So it's funded by the government apprenticeship levy scheme. We're working with Capella Associates to develop that program at the moment. It's due to launch sometime soon, next couple of months or so. So hopefully that will be a great success, because really all we're investing in is people's time, and the money is coming from elsewhere. So hopefully that will work. That's quite a new scheme that hasn't been around very long. So we're really excited to be piloting that at the moment.
That's great. Thanks, Dan. I'm going to stick with you for a second, Diane, for the next question, and I'm going to flick back to Joe and then follow on to Luciana. So there's two interesting questions that are sort of linked, which have come in there, which is relating to getting key stakeholders on board. So one being, how do you advise on getting your senior leadership on board? But then separate to that, how do you advise getting a reluctant workforce involved? So maybe, Dan, if you could sort of take those two questions together, obviously two very different audiences, but getting people involved and engaged in process excellence.
Yeah, so it really does come back to what I was saying earlier about it has to be a fundamental enabler for your strategy. If your improvement strategy comes from your local business strategy, which in turn comes from your higher level business strategy, then the senior leadership and the workforce as well will be able to see that linkage of how the improvements that they get involved with will move the dial on where the business is going and how well the business is doing. If there isn't that clear line of sight, that clear linkage there, people will get a bit lost with it and they won't see the point. So getting people on board, it really is all about that line of sight up to the business strategy. And particularly for senior leadership, they will see how what you're doing helps them to achieve their objectives, their goals, their targets. Because, like I say, there is that linkage there. In terms of the workforce, I think that's a bit more about the personal why. Why do you do it? I mentioned that I do it because I kind of really care about everybody in the facility and I want them to be at their best every day. And I think just work out what your why is and be authentic with it. When I was quite new to improvement, I kind of said to people, it's all about improving the business, it's all about the bottom line, it's about improving delivery. Actually, for me, it's not. It's about making them happier. And I've kind of started to tell people that now. And I think they respect that and they warm to it a little bit more. And just showing them that you care and communicating what you're doing, why you're doing it. All right, you'll never get everybody involved. You'll never convince everyone. But if you can get some really great people to work with you, it really does make the whole thing much more pleasurable and much easier.
That's great. Thanks, Diane. And same question to you, Joe, from your perspective. How do you get senior leadership on board? And then separate to that, how do you get a reluctant workforce involved in particular?
Okay. It is actually a very similar answer. So certainly with senior leadership, it has to be around the strategic priorities, and that's really the what's in it for them. And so it's tying it back to how this work is going to support the strategic priorities. But from what I've learned, quite often I think it's important to stick with the conversation with senior leadership, because you may actually find that it's not so much the theory of this approach that they're struggling with. It's more maybe around the confidence of implementing it successfully within your organisation. So have you got the right people leading the initiative, and can you convince them that you can embed it quickly and get benefits? So I think it's very important to move quite quickly into how you would test it out, and that's where that starting small and scaling up is really helpful, because then you can demonstrate that you've been able to make it real. You can let them know how much money that is, and you keep that cost down. And once you've proved it and you've fed back and you've shown them some data, you can then come back and say, if you can invest X, it will give you Y in terms of scaling to this number of teams and potential benefits. So it's a case of keeping the dialogue going and keeping providing data for them to build their confidence and make data-driven decisions. In terms of individuals, again, it's very powerful, especially if people are less motivated, to talk about the blockers. So what we did recently is we asked the project management community to do just that, and brainstorm the things that hold you back in terms of project delivery, and prioritise those for us. And we will take them to our management group and we'll discuss them together in terms of how we can unblock those for you. So I think it's definitely along the lines when you've got a team that aren't as motivated, along the lines of removing negative things for them and removing blockers, but also tapping into the growth mindset. So career, developing yourself, developing your skills, having new experiences.
That's great. Thanks, Jo. Appreciate that. We are at the top of the hour. We have 2 other questions that have come in. However, fully appreciate if people have next meetings and want to drop off. As I mentioned before, we will be posting this, so you'll be able to listen at your leisure, hopefully, to the last couple of questions that we have in here. So there's a question which came in really around blockers, barriers you face in your business when trying to drive a culture of continuous improvement. I want to throw it over to the Productivity team a second, because we have seen a number of barriers come through from engaged with a lot of organizations and try to help start them on this journey. But I'm going to kind of do this as a bit of a quick fire round. I've opened up the mics for Denise and Luciana, and also for Diane and Jo. So if I can go through one at a time and just give me a quick barrier that you sort of see. So Denise, barriers to introducing continuous improvement.
Having the right sponsorship. I think getting the right people from the top who are bought into it. There is a bit of, if your leaders are doing it, the rest will follow. So that's a key barrier we've been finding with why certain change projects and transformation projects have not been as successful.
That's great. Thanks, Diane. Top barrier? You can't pick the same one, something different?
Lack of communication of what it is you're trying to achieve, and lack of trust from the workforce of perhaps when something has tried to been done in the past but not been done very well, they don't trust that it will work this time. So just over-communicate with them.
Communication. Thanks, Diane. Luciana, what are the barriers that we see in terms of sort of creating a continuous improvement culture in organizations?
What I think we experience is also this kind of fear of failure. And I think it's building a culture of continuous improvement is also like taking a step away from, the fear of failure, but actually being open to transparency and feedback. Feedback is actually an opportunity for improvement. So I think that's, and then stepping into this growth mindset instead of being stuck with what we know.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luciana. And finally, from yourself, Jo, we've obviously taken all the good ones in terms of other things that you've seen in terms of barriers.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the change management textbook a little bit. There's some useful stuff from a company called ProSci, so PROSCI. Strong and urgent case for change. So why do you have to do it, and why now? And have you clearly articulated what the risk is of keeping doing what you've always been doing? So people have to feel that there's a strong urgency to do something different.
That's great. Thanks, Jo. Just muting the lines again. So again, we've covered most of the questions. There are one or two that are still hanging around. For those people that have raised a question and haven't had a chance to have that answered yet, then we will follow up individually with you. We are beyond the top of the hour. We appreciate everybody's time. We are now starting to see some attendees drop off, which is great. Finally, can you just move on to the final slide so we can close out? That's great. So hopefully you've enjoyed the session today. As I said before, we will be posting a recording of this. And again, we're very happy to take questions via email. We'll send some materials out to people so they have something to follow up on. But, we feel passionately about this topic, process excellence, from a productivity point of view. I'd like to thank our guest speakers, Diane from Babcock and Jo from Post Office. We think it's extremely important that our clients hear not only our voice, but the voice of practitioners and people that we work with closely around this topic as well. The importance of human-centered design from our point of view. So a number of times, we heard putting the customer at the heart of thinking through your process excellence endeavors, which is extremely important, but also thinking about staff making those staff happy, those people working day in and day out, engaging in these business processes. So the more we can enable them to add value to the business, by giving them a good set of business processes and the right technology to support that, so they can support your customers, is extremely important. So putting humans, individuals, at the heart of your process excellence and redesign efforts is important. And building that culture of continuous improvement and innovation. Your process excellence, isn't a one-off. It isn't a project. It's a capability that organizations need to build and foster and support, and talent that they need to develop to help us support the organization going forwards. Next slide, please. So we have been your presenters. We thank you very much for your time, and we hope everybody has a good day. So we'll close out the webinar here. Look out for future webinar events. We'll be emailing out to this contact list. Obviously, we'll try not to bombard you with too much stuff, but hopefully you found this useful. If you have, feel free to reach out to us via email. I'm very happy to have follow-on conversations with anybody around any of the topics raised here. So thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye.